downfield. Can they do it again? Yes, they can!
And the catch is made by Taj Washington. Touchdown, USC.
Blocked by Embiid! Timmy, yes!
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Beef Up Front podcast here on Pick Swap Media. This is your host, Ryan Coyle, back with another episode as part of our lead up to the NBA draft with our prospect profile series. And today we will be talking about former five-star recruit, former the next up, former the next great one, the next LeBron, whatever you want to call him, Emoni Bates, who after being on the cover of Sports Illustrated, as you can see it right here, born for this. Magic, Michael, LeBron, and the 15-year-old who is next in line. This is a kid that had immense pressure on him from day one, since he became like a highly regarded player after his freshman year of high school, and has really just ever since gone a bit downhill. He committed to Michigan State. I believe he reclassed into the class of 2022, committed to Michigan State, eventually decommitted from there, went to Memphis, had a atrocious freshman year at Memphis, battled injuries or whatever they wanted to call it. They were just withholding him from games, eventually transferred to Eastern Michigan University in his hometown of Ypsilanti, Michigan. And from there on, he had some good stretches at Eastern Michigan and is still a highly regarded, basketball talent. But is he an NBA player? Can he fit on an NBA team? That remains to be seen, and that's what we're here to break down today. A 6'9", 190-pound forward wing out of Eastern Michigan. As I was saying, just finished his sophomore year up there after a really bad freshman year at the University of Memphis, where he basically was kicked off the team for lack of better words. But when you look at Emoni Bates, he's always been a very talented kid, and probably since he started playing basketball, was probably always the most talented kid, and everyone was always in his ear telling him how good he was. Like I was saying, on the cover of Sports Illustrated, Magic, Michael, LeBron, the next one up, Emoni Bates, and he was always compared to Kevin Durant just because he's got that long, wiry frame to him. But when you look at his strengths out in the basketball court, he, at the end of the day, if you're playing one-on-one, he might be like my pick to go out there and win me a game. Like, out of anyone in this draft class, he is just simply a pure scorer and just one of those guys when he can get in the zone. Like when I was watching his offensive film, there was several occasions where I was just like, wow, like you see the flashes of why he was hyped up to be the next great offensive NBA player. And I could definitely see why he was hyped up to be that good of a player and the next generational prospect. But you also see a lot of flashes of like, all right, is this a NBA player or is this like a street baller? Like, this past year at Eastern Michigan, one game, he had 43 points in a game in the MAC for Eastern Michigan, one of the worst teams this year in the MAC. They didn't even make the conference tournament. And that included 29 straight for his team. So this dude went out and he was just shooting it pretty much every possession down, but he was going off and he was in the zone, 29 straight for his team. I love his pull-up game and his ability to hit tough shots. That's really the thing that stuck out most when watching his film. A pretty good assortment of dribble moves to go along with the pace that he plays at. That really allowed him to get to his spots and hit his shots as well. Like he was able to, on several different occasions, watching him dictate like the pace of the game in the half court. And he doesn't need much space to get it off with that length. He's able to, or he doesn't have really long arms, but it's just that like wiry frame at 6'9". He's going to have probably like 6'6", 6'7" guys. He's able to see over them and get it off. But this is one of my favorite things talking about this series. Emoni Bates fits right in there with Isaiah Wong, who we just did a breakdown on, of a Tuesday night in January guy. Bryce Sensabaugh was another one. And when I say a Tuesday night in January guy, when you're playing on Tuesday, January, 14th, and it's a Orlando Magic versus the Indiana Pacers, a game that's probably going to have like 10,000 people there max, he's able to go out there, and if you're a star player, if the Pacers decide that night, he's on the Pacers, just say, and they decide to sit Tyrese Halliburton that night, and they're like, all right, Monty, you're going to go out there and play 32 minutes tonight. Show me what you got. wouldn't surprise me at all if he goes out there and has 25-30 in an NBA game. But it's also one of those things you can't count on it consistently. Like, I think Cam Thomas epitomizes perfectly the Tuesday night in January guy where when he gets the opportunity, he's going to go out there and cook. He's going to get his shots up for sure. But is that something that's sustainable over an entire NBA season? I don't think so. But I do think there certainly is a spot in the NBA for Emoni Bates with his ability to score the ball. Has a really nice fadeaway game as well and can hit tough shots off one leg. These like one-legged fadeaways, really tough, unconventional type shots, but he's able to make them and he's able to create enough space to get them off. It's just he's got a dangerous bag to him. Dangerous coming off screens and pulling up, and a really nice crossover in his bag and a cross like step back move in his arsenal as well that allows him to free up some space and continue to get his buckets. Just one of the best pure scorers in this class. Has pretty deep range, and Emoni Bates, if you want to say one thing about him, not afraid to shoot it. Like, does not lack confidence at all. He will pull up whenever, wherever. And that's another reason why NBA coaches are going to have to like reel him in a little bit at certain times. But on that Tuesday night in January, Emoni, just go out there and play and be one of those guys where somebody on FanDuel you see puts in an Emoni Bates 35 plus bet at plus like 10,000 odds, and this dude's the next lottery ticket winner after that. Like, it wouldn't be surprising at all to see him have multiple 40-point games in the NBA or be a guy that's out of the league in 2 years just because he can't fit into a conventional team style offense in the NBA. Deep range, as I was saying, but just really complete offensive game from the perimeter. Once we get into in a little bit talking about his weaknesses, once he gets inside the arc, a completely different playmaker, or excuse me, a completely different player. But he's an underrated playmaker as well. Averaged 3.2 assists per game in his lone year at Eastern Michigan. So a guy that can go out there and get you buckets at the NBA level, I think for sure. But then we get into his weaknesses. What else does he really do? As I was saying, an underrated playmaker at 3.2 assists per game. And he's always been ripped for his like efficiency. But he did shoot, I think it was 38% from three this year, which is pretty solid, but he is playing in the MAC, and 44% from the field. So takes a lot of tough, unconventional shots that might hurt those numbers. But at the same time, he puts up like enough and scores the ball enough where those efficiency numbers aren't really the worst. So efficiency goes up and down. He can be ripped for that, but he just kind of seems like watching him, he's just more so of a me guy. Like, am I watching an NBA player or am I watching a street baller out here? Looks like he's always just in his bag, just trying to get his one-on-one buckets. So doesn't create that much space. And at times, as I was saying, he's good at hitting tough shots. That's what I've said on several occasions throughout this thing with Isaiah Wong, Bryce Sensabaugh. They're really good at hitting these tough shots, but when you're not that explosive, top-notch, top-tier athlete, is that really going to be sustainable at the next level when you have these much better, much more athletic defenders guarding you? It doesn't create as much space at times when he's taking those contested shots. So it's kind of is that translatable? Is that transferable to the next level? That remains to be seen. But I think he was getting away with that a lot during his sophomore year playing in the MAC at Eastern Michigan. Can he play in structure is the biggest question for me. I think with him, seems like everything is iso ball, street ball type offense, very perimeter oriented. And you see with his slim frame as well, will he ever be a guy that's able to be a factor when it comes to attacking the rim? I don't think so. And he's really the king of the, as we always heard coaches say during basketball, when a guy is on the wing and he's doing all these step backs and he shoots some crazy, whatever, fadeaway three, and the coach is just saying, no, no, no. And then he makes it. And then the player looks over and like gives him a little look. And the coach, all he can do is do the shrug. Like, he's the king of that shot where it looks like he's taking these shitty ass shots and then he just finds a way to get them to fall at times. So only averaged 4.3 rebounds per game as a 6'9" wing in the MAC. Those numbers should be better. Like, I don't really think he's that willing of a rebounder. Just so dependent on his scoring and a very talented offensive player. But as I've talked about, I don't know how sustainable his offense will be at the next level, just with the amount of contested shots and being so perimeter oriented. If people are running him off the line, is he going to be able to finish in the lane? I'm not that sure. He was like the poorest rated athlete on his Memphis team his freshman year at their pro day. Like, all like the athletic testing, he tested terribly in that. So has to improve his athleticism. Does this guy have a good enough work ethic to improve that overall athleticism? Remains to be seen. Not a very good defender either. Needs to add a lot of strength to his frame because I think he's going to be asked to guard threes at the next level. And when you look at a guy like, I just always envision the perfect wing is Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum would abuse him, get him on the block, and just go to work on him. And I don't know if Emoni Bates has that work ethic in him to improve these flaws. So he's a guy that his projection for me is the ultimate boom or bust player. I could see him being a guy that sticks around the league and just be a scorer off the bench for you who averages 14, 15 points per game for the next 10 years. Or a guy that's out of the league in 1 or 2 years because if he's not getting the playing time he wants or he's not getting the shots that he wants, is he going to be a locker room cancer? Is he going to be causing problems? That remains to be seen, and something that I think the teams having the chance to interview him and talk to him would get to know more than somebody just from the outside watching. But he just seems like so much of an ISO type player. I don't know if playing in the NBA is really going to be for him for the long term. So boomer busts for me, a mid to late second round guy. And my comparison, it's a hard guy to compare, but I would go with Cam Reddish, another former highly touted recruit, went to Duke, was the third fiddle behind Zion and RJ Barrett, but another guy that was, he's from the Philadelphia area, was always like hyped up and proclaimed as the next future NBA All-Star out of this area. And he's just kind of amounted to like an NBA role player, but he has shown his ability at times to go off and have some 20-point outings. But if Emoni Bates, after all said and done, has this Cam Reddish type of career where I think Reddish is going into year 4 in the league, bounced around for a few teams, but I think he'll be a guy that's in the league for 8 to 10 years, and he might just need that right opportunity, more of extended of a role to really burst out. But if he has a Cam Reddish type career, at least thus far, I think that would be a pretty solid outcome because you're probably getting Emoni Bates in the mid to second round between, I'd say, like 40 and 50-ish, where you'd be picking him. So I think that would be a pretty solid career with all said and done with what's gone on with him at his time at Memphis and Eastern Michigan. So that'll do it for our Emoni Bates breakdown here on the Beef Up Front podcast on Pick Swap Media. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we will talk soon.